I built a community from 0 people to over 4,000 members worldwide. Now that's pretty cool, but what's even more awesome is that I managed to clone myself as a community manager and create 16 versions of myself. These clones help support the thousands of members worldwide. Now, if I'm being really honest, these 16 clones were actually better than me.
What?
They were active members who volunteered their time. They were so passionate about the community that they were a part of, and they're incredible. In fact, when I came down with COVID, I was down and out. I was in bed for days. But the best part was these 16 clones showed me I wasn't actually needed to keep this community from going. So I'd gone from 0 members to building a community that virtually ran itself. So how did I build this? It was all thanks to these clones that I'm calling ambassadors. I want to share how I went from building 0 members to building this ambassador program. So let's go. So first I'm going to outline the key steps to actually building the community from scratch. The very first thing I did is I researched. I reached out to key members that I thought would be perfect for this community. I really wanted to understand what was missing in the landscape. What communities were they already a part of? What were they truly looking for that was missing? These key members gave me tons of great insights. I talk a lot about the importance of researching the community before you build for it. You have to get in there and do the hard work, ask them questions like what challenges they're being faced with, what they're just really looking for. Are they looking to connect with other people for X reason? Find out what value you can bring to these people. The research is so important. So that is the very first step that I did. I think I did 10 interviews one-to-one. So I jumped on video calls with people and I had 15-minute chats with them, and it was awesome. I got to learn so much about them as people as well and what they were looking for. And it really helped me develop the strategy that I could build a community where they would turn up every day. I also sent out a survey to about 50 potential members that we knew would also have some insight, but we just didn't have the capacity to interview every single person one-to-one. If you do have that capacity, by the way, by all means go ahead and have those 10-15-minute chats with everybody. But to be honest, if you don't have that capacity, then sending out a group survey is another great way to at least gain some further insight and not just try to make assumptions as to what your community actually needs. After I went through that research, I then started to craft the vision for the community. Why should this community exist? What problem are we looking to solve here? And when I started the community, I made sure that branding was on point. The vision was clear. So why are we all here? What are we trying to do here? Who belongs to this community? Who is it for? And I also made sure that the culture of the community was strong from the start. So things like rituals, welcoming new members in, the way that I would welcome new members, the house rules when they agreed to join the community, what were they agreeing to? What sort of behaviors could we expect from our community members when they join the community? For me, the community was really fostering a sense of not only belonging, but also it was really important that they felt like this is a safe space. There was going to be no judgment. They weren't going to have a fear of losing their job by asking stupid questions. That was really important for them. So we made the community private. We also made sure that all the wording throughout the community was, there are no dumb questions here. We're all learning. All of these aspects really contributed to creating a culture for the community. Members knew what to expect. As soon as they clicked join the group, I wanted it to be really clear what they were getting themselves into. I also wanted to make sure that they got value from day one of joining the group. So remember all that research I was talking about? Well, I paid attention to that research. I paid attention to what people were looking for, and I delivered even by the time they joined the group. I was already making sure that the benefits of joining the group were being addressed through all the research that we'd done. So for instance, members were looking for specific resources, and that was something that they said they were looking for. They couldn't find it online. Well, I made sure that as part of the launch of the community, we had those resources well beyond what they were looking for. I also made sure that we had people from the company addressing questions real time, going above and beyond, especially during the beginning. I doubled down on the surprise element. I wanted people to join the community and feel like this is completely different to any other community that I've experienced. So I think that's a really important part of why this community became so successful, is because right from the start, we already set the tone that was completely different from all the competitors out there. I not only doubled down on that value add, I tripled down. I just kept adding value. Whenever somebody was asking for something, I made sure that it was either myself or somebody in the team or somebody beyond could help that person out. If we didn't have an answer to a question, it was still addressed. Why didn't we have an answer? Full transparency, fully authentic as well. We behaved like human beings in the group, and we also made sure that members felt like they were being treated like humans. In doing so, we were able to start developing relationships with people in the community. Now that was a really important part of being able to go above and beyond with this community, especially as time went by. All right, now let's talk about how I grew the community. So at this point, I probably had a couple of hundred of members, and they were super engaged. They were excited to be a part of the group, but we needed to get the word out. Up until that point, I had made sure that I had doubled, tripled down on the value add. On top of that, I made sure to make it easy for members to invite others. And we found that organically, people started to invite other people. It showed us that we were on the right path to delivering the value to these members. But growth was really all about getting marketing involved. So we held events where we were inviting people that didn't know about our community to join the events. We would have shout outs to the community. We wouldn't just link out to the community and say, hey, join this group. We would actually share really cool stories of how the community was helping our members. Even with the small hundreds that we had, it just showcased to people that weren't part of a group that this community was worth joining. It wasn't going to be a community where as soon as they pressed join, it was going to be crickets. So we actually actively showed activity that was happening and created a sense of FOMO. We also try to make it really fun for people to invite others. Now, bear in mind, this was a private group. We did have an application process to have members join this group because I wanted to make sure that we kept the quality of the membership high. I was more interested in ensuring that the quality of the group was higher than the quantity, because it didn't really matter to me whether we had tens of thousands of members in our community. If we had crickets, then that's not a successful community. We had hundreds of members at the time and incredibly high engagement. We had a lot of success stories to share from all of that engagement. So I wanted to multiply that effect and obviously grow it. We wanted to reach out to more people, but we didn't want it to be at the detriment of the quality of our community. We kept the application process in, we kept vetting people. And as soon as we had marketing really help to drive awareness, we started to get a lot more applications for people to join. I was always paying attention to the active members. So who was constantly staying active? Who was the most engaged? Who was helping other members by answering their questions? These are things that you can pay attention to right from the start. But as we were growing, I also paid attention to these active members. You'd have new members that would join and they may be a little bit earlier on in the process and need more help. And you'd have members that had been a part of the community for a longer period of time help out these newer members. It's really important that you're paying attention to who those active members are. I actually started a list and started to write down these names. I deepened the relationships that I had with these active members. So I'd reach out to them one-to-one, find out how they were doing, find out how I could deliver even more value to them as active members, because I recognized that they were contributing so much to the community without even being asked to contribute. So I really appreciated these active members, and this is a key step for the next stage of developing an ambassador program. Let's talk about how to go from an active community that's grown, it's looking good. I had thousands of members. It was a healthy community. We had people asking questions. We were achieving our KPIs based on what the community had been built for. But there was only one of me, and I was a team of one in this community. So I went from starting a community from scratch. So I had team members within the company that were able to join the community. They were supporting by answering some questions. They weren't part of the community team. It wasn't their full-time job to manage the community. And when you're talking about thousands of members globally, with a rate of engagement that was very high, it was actually higher than industry standards. It's a fantastic problem to have, to be honest. I was really happy to have that problem. But we also had the challenge of not being able to expand the community team. The company was already stretched. They had other communities that had to be managed. This community had been built from the grassroots up. And I really had to look at an alternative solution to building a team within this community to support it properly. I also knew that the best people to support the community were within the community. I paid attention to these active members. They were the most passionate to support other members because they'd gone through these challenges themselves. They'd found that they'd got so much value from being a member of the community. We'd worked so hard to deliver so much value to them and developed a culture of helping each other. So we found that these active members would be the perfect ambassadors to be able to support the community members across the world. And that's where I decided that an ambassador program where we had ambassadors from across all the different regions in the world could properly provide support in real time in their time zones. So the first step was doing more research. I'm a big fan of research because, to be honest, I'm all about giving the people what they want. And now that we had a community of thousands of members, this part was actually really easy. We created a survey, sent it out to the whole community, asked them what their thoughts were of building an ambassador program. What would they like? What would they like more support on? So what were we lacking? What weren't we doing well? Even though the figures said that we were doing well as an active community, I still knew that there were gaps, improvements that we could make because we were limited in terms of the resources that we were giving. I wanted to make sure that we understood what was lacking and what could the ambassador program provide that I couldn't even as a single community manager. I also wanted to know what benefits they thought ambassadors should get. If people were willing to put their hand up and provide additional support, what were they looking for in return? We gave some prompts as to things that we were able to potentially be able to deliver in terms of benefits, but we also left it open. Now, timing is key with this step because I really didn't want to push an ambassador program until we were ready. I wanted to have deep roots in this community where we had really enthusiastic people that had been part of the community for a while. They'd seen time and time again that value had been added, not just to themselves, but overall, and that the overall mission of what we were trying to achieve was actually something that the community would help us actually achieve. We had a broader mission, and I wanted to make sure that people understood what that broader mission was, that they'd really signed up for it, and that they weren't just after being an ambassador for short-term benefits. I saw this constantly, where there was this idea of getting community members that were active to volunteer, and in return they would earn coins. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that in the community research that's been done over many years, it's well known in the industry that intrinsic benefits, and those are the deeper motivations as to why someone would actually want to volunteer in a community, those are the ones that are more successful in terms of getting the better quality of people, the better quality of output, versus just outright paying people with money. There's nothing wrong with paying people. I don't believe in just going down the intrinsic route. We did want to tie some extrinsic benefits as well. Extrinsic doesn't have to just be money or coins or tokens. It can be things like swag. For instance, some of our members really wanted to portray themselves as leaders in the field. So how do we do that? How do we help empower them? And I made sure to develop a strategy for our ambassadors that met those needs. Timing is truly key with this. I really didn't want to push for ambassadors way too early. Really wanted to understand who these people were, their motivations, show them and deliver the value, that they were on this journey to something bigger, and then go ahead and offer them the ability to potentially become an ambassador. Now, you don't have to go full kilt with this. I started small with a pilot, and I started small. Because this is the first ambassador program for this type of community that had been done for the company, I wanted to make sure that we ran a pilot, truly understood whether we were on the right path here, make any tweaks that were necessary before we rolled out with a proper ambassador program. It's key to be transparent as well. I told the pilot ambassadors that they were part of this exciting new initiative, going to help us shape the ambassador program. And it also started developing more of a buzz in the community. They saw these pilot ambassadors that were starting to take a part in initiatives to support the community more. And when it came down to actually launching this proper ambassador program, we had more interest. We had more awareness around what we were trying to build. I definitely felt like I was more comfortable launching a proper ambassador program after running a pilot. So the ambassador program, you've got to research, you've got to ask your members, what should the program benefits be? What are you interested in doing task-wise? What will actually deliver impact to the community? So what support do they actually need from the ambassadors? Those requests will determine what the roles of the ambassadors are. And it is a bit of a matchmaking process where you're working out what are the strengths of potential ambassadors, what could they do, and what needs to be done. What support is required from the community that ambassadors could potentially provide that support on. So some ideas, for instance, could be, do you need more real-time support in the community to answer questions around whatever it is that your community discusses or needs support from? It could be that they're looking for more content. So for instance, maybe they want more YouTube videos. Maybe they want more tutorials. They want TikToks, content requests to train them, to educate. Ambassadors could also be trained to help manage the community. So I talked a lot about how I cloned myself. Well, like I mentioned, this is a private community and we needed to vet applications that came through. So we actually trained some of the ambassadors to vet new applications coming through and help ensure that the new members were the right people that belong there and welcome them in as well. That was a really valuable task that ambassadors could do, where it felt like a new member was being welcomed by another member, but also a member that was an ambassador. So they just felt like they were getting that extra support straight away from being welcomed into the community. Ambassadors can help you develop further relationships and be that middle tier that you need to increase your network within the community. There's also the opportunity for moderation. And again, these are all tasks that actually could be trained, but you need to ensure that people that could potentially be ambassadors are actually interested in that. Are they interested in the day-to-day? They want to be in the community. They want to be having those real-time chats. And at the same time, because you've trained them, they may actually have that expertise in future to be able to moderate better and keep your community safe. So for them, I mean, the motivation could be that the community has provided so much value that they do want to ensure that the integrity and the value add within the community stays at that high level. Now, I've talked about the importance of timing with this ambassador program. I don't believe that you should be starting an ambassador program straight away as soon as you launch a community. I think there are steps to be taken in terms of when an ambassador program is right to start, when you already have engaged members, and when you're at that tipping point where you really need more support from within the community, and ambassadors could play a vital role in helping you with that support. But you have to understand their motivations as people as well. And to me, that takes time to be able to deepen those relationships with those active members that could become ambassadors. I highly recommend starting with a pilot. I ran a trial for 3 months to see, would this actually work for this type of community? It was perfect because it helped me get buy-in from the company as well. I wanted to have some more resources to really ensure that the benefits for the ambassadors would be of the highest caliber possible. And to do that, I needed to prove the impact that ambassadors could potentially have. It also helped to generate buzz within the community so they could see these ambassadors live in action. They knew that if the trial was successful, that we would be rolling it out where more people could apply to be ambassadors in future. The pilot also helped me collect feedback from the small group of ambassadors. I learned what worked, what didn't. Did they feel like they had enough support to be an ambassador? What was lacking? And all of that feedback helped me develop a more robust ambassador program. In terms of actually going ahead and launching the ambassador program, I had taken all that feedback from the pilot program and I developed more resources. I developed more benefits that truly motivated. I developed a more formal application process. So for the trial, I had handpicked the ambassadors that I thought would be really good for the trial. But when it came to actually launching the ambassador program, I needed a formal application process. I developed a CRM system for our ambassadors. So we had 16 ambassadors, but I really wanted to develop a process where we could easily go from 15 to 100, which was my goal. If we had tens of thousands of members, we could keep increasing the ambassadors. But in order to do so, I needed to make sure that everything that I did was scalable. And that is a piece of advice I would give to you if you're really thinking about this in terms of a large community that's global and you're seeing that this is probably going to get quite big, then start thinking from the beginning, how can you scale this up? I don't want that to deter you and stop you from doing anything because, to be honest, thinking about scaling things from even 5 ambassadors to 20 can feel quite daunting. But at the same time, I did develop processes where if people applied and we had more than 100 ambassadors that applied, for instance, to the process, I could manage those applications. The CRM system that I built was comprehensive. I knew everything about the ambassadors, from their previous experience, their current skill set, anything relevant to their tasks as ambassadors, their interests, what do they actually want to do as ambassadors, what benefits were they looking for, where were they located, region, country, time zone, anything that required me to develop a really good understanding as to the ambassadors themselves. And I could also categorize them. So all the ambassadors in the US, for instance, versus all the ambassadors in the EMEA region. And it truly helped us develop a program that was actually valuable and had impact. I developed tons of resources as well for the ambassadors. Now, I didn't want this to be overwhelming. The ambassadors were actually volunteers. Their time was really precious to me. So I wanted to make sure that the resources that we developed for them were empowering them to be the best ambassadors that they could be and giving them the knowledge that they needed. We spent time on these resources to make sure that they were digestible, easy to understand and to read, and to help them get started as soon as possible whilst all being on the same page. We needed that consistency across the program. And I developed graphics as well. So working with the graphics team. Now, if you don't have a graphics team, that's absolutely fine. You can either hire from Fiverr, find somebody that is great with graphics, even in your community. I think, to be honest, I did actually ask community members for feedback on some of the graphics. And I think that's a really fun way, actually, of getting community members involved. If you want swag, you can create swag as well. For me, one of the benefits of the ambassadors was really developing their online presence. They wanted to be recognized as ambassadors for this company. It actually would help their career prospects, their prospects for other paid gigs. So we really went all in with this and developed really beautiful graphics that could be shared not only on their LinkedIn, but on their websites. We had official badges that were linked to Credly, which was industry recognized badges. We created banners that they could use on their social media, email signatures as well, so that they could tell the world that they were ambassadors. And that was a huge benefit to them. We also helped them with their social media announcements. So like I said, their time was precious. So we tried to make it as easy as possible. Even their announcements to the world as ambassadors, we wanted to make it as easy as copy paste, but we were also very flexible to let them have their own spin as to how they wanted to announce to the world. We just gave them all the assets. Now let's go through some of my major learnings from building this ambassador program. First up, timing is key. Don't start your ambassador program too early. I was patient with this. I built up the community first. I made sure it was a really healthy community. And then I went through the process of doing all the hard work to launch an ambassador program, but I took my time with it. I also took my time with research. So I properly made sure to understand the motivations behind what ambassadors would actually want to do, what benefits they would want from being an ambassador, really understanding what the community needed as well. So bridging the gaps between what ambassadors wanted to do and what the community needed. I launched a pilot first, and I would highly recommend doing the same if you're considering launching an ambassador program. The primary reason is there is a lot of kinks that you'll find in the pilot. I had issues like an ambassador completely dropping out. What happens? How do you determine the effectiveness of an ambassador? How do you measure the impact? All of these things you can learn throughout the pilot, and then you can feel more confident to launch with all of these learnings. Build it well. By this, I mean I put a lot of time and effort and also allocated resources to the ambassador program because I was aware of the ability for the ambassadors to truly support the community and scale up. So I put in a lot of time into not only the research and understanding what ambassadors should be doing, but also the resources in terms of handbooks, graphics, the benefits, like properly putting a strategy in place. So take your time, do your research, do a pilot, and then with all of those learnings, make sure you actually apply and execute well. Think ahead as well when you're building. So for example, I was thinking, how could I scale this beyond 20 ambassadors? How could I go to 100 ambassadors one day? It's not something that I want you to bog yourself down with, but I definitely built some parts of the program thinking ahead as to what would happen the following year. Is there things that we could build processes wise that would really be able to work no matter how large the ambassador program would become? Make sure you understand the motivations of your ambassadors, deepen your relationships with them, and it is your job to motivate them, to keep them engaged, to make sure that they're happy. Happy ambassadors are going to support your community better. And empowering is probably the most important job that I felt I had with creating and building this ambassador program. If I can empower my ambassadors to really play up their strengths, as well as teach them skills to become better ambassadors, it's a win-win, not only for your ambassadors, but your community. The whole program's going to succeed if you empower your ambassadors to truly shine. It's also really positive for community members to see your ambassadors doing really well. Wow, you made it all the way to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's been a while since I filmed a YouTube video. I super appreciate all the lovely responses I've received. I must admit this ambassador program did take up a lot of my time to launch it, to properly make sure it was off the ground that the ambassadors were supported. I really wanted to take the time to digest and share my learnings with you all. Thank you so much for all your support. And if you have any questions around building your own ambassador program, I'm really appreciative of all of you guys for supporting me. I'll see you in the next video.